In this episode, we're joined by Simone Mattinson, Parent Partnership Manager for our group, who has over 10 years of experience within the SEN sector. We'll explore the different sections of the draft EHCP, the parts of the plan which you can appeal, plus so much more. Remember to hit the like button, comment and subscribe, because it helps us to grow our channel and reach even more parents and carers. Thanks for joining us today, Simone. Today we're going to have a chat about education, health and care plans, which I imagine people will be more familiar with the term EHCP. But in particular, we're going to think about a draft EHCP. So can we begin by you explaining to us what is a draft EHCP?
Certainly. So as you quite eloquently described it there, an education and healthcare plan is a legal document that encompasses obviously all of those particular areas. So it's looking at the educational needs, the healthcare needs and the care needs of a young person with special educational needs. So looking particularly at the draft plan, it's exactly that. It's a draft version of what the local authority propose to finalise, to put forward. There is a long process to getting a draft EHCP. From day one when you put your application in for a needs assessment, there is a 20-week window, which means that from the date where you apply for the plan should be finalised if you are going to be issued with one at 20 weeks. Mm-hmm. You would expect to get your draft plan anywhere from around 14 weeks of the process, because that then allows for certain things that need to happen after the draft has been issued before it's finalised at the 20-week window.
Oh, well, that's a brilliant piece of advice from the very beginning, that there's time markers to be thinking about. Can you tell us about the different sections of the draft EHCP, please?
Certainly. So every education and healthcare plan has to have certain sections in it, and they are sections A through to K. You'll see lots of different education and healthcare plans that ultimately they must contain all of those sections, but they might look different. So from one local authority to another, you might have sections that are laid out slightly differently. They might have a different format, but from a legal perspective, they have to contain sections A through to K. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go into every single section, but there are some really key ones that you need to be looking out for on your plan, and particularly looking at what those sections contain. Mm-hmm. So the first one is section B, which is the needs of the child, their special educational needs. Mm-hmm. They have to be in section B. Mm-hmm. Section F of the plan is the section that covers what provision is required to meet those needs. So what do we need to be doing to meet the needs that are in section B of the plan? And then the last one is section I of the plan, which is the school. Now, it's really important to know that you shouldn't have the school named in the draft of the plan. And that's because the school should reflect the needs of the child. So there's lots of different types of schools out there, and choosing the right school should be dependent on the needs of the child. So if we're finalising a plan with a school, we've got to be sure that we've got the right needs in there and the right provision. So when they issue a draft plan, there's an opportunity at that stage for us to go back to the local authority to talk to them and say, not particularly happy with what's in section B. It doesn't truly reflect my child's needs. Mm. Or there might be some provision that's missing in section F. So we need to go back and ask for that to be amended. Mm. And if we're naming a school at the draft stage, we're kind of jumping the gun, because we're saying that's the school that we want, but actually we haven't yet fully determined that we've got the right needs and the right provision in the plan.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can I just quickly nip back to section B?
Yes.
Just to kind of clarify, you talked about that section highlighting the child's special education needs. Do you need a diagnosis in that section?
You do not need a diagnosis to get an education and healthcare plan. It's actually a bit of a myth. I speak to parents all day, every day in my role as a parent support specialist with the Witherslack group. And parents often ring us and say that, I can't apply for an EHCP because my child's not got a diagnosis. It isn't about diagnosis. It's about having special educational needs. And what that means is that a child has got needs that are over and above what their peers at school have got. So they're not, they've got additional needs over and above those of the peers. In order to get an EHCP, it's not about having a diagnosis. It's about they have or they may have special educational needs, and that they may need an education and healthcare plan in order to put the provision in place and to meet the needs.
Brilliant. Thank you for that little bit of clarity around that. When we're thinking about the draft part of the plan, if you're not happy with certain sections or it comes back and it feels like it doesn't quite fit the needs of your child, or there's something that you quite like to challenge, are there any sections that you can appeal?
There are. So I'll come to that in a second, but I think what I'd like to talk about is what you should be doing when you get the plan. So what to look out for and what's really sort of key and important information. And that feeds into the bits that you can appeal. Mm-hmm. The best advice that I think I can give, and it's something that I've used a lot when I've been supporting parents to look through an education and healthcare plan at the draft stage, is when you receive it, you should receive Section K, which is all of the appendices and all of the reports and things that have gone into creating that plan. Mm-hmm. They should come with the draft. Mm-hmm. Get 2 highlighting pens in different colours. So blue for Section B and let's say pink for Section F. What you need to be doing is going through each and every one of those reports and having a look for your child's needs within those reports. So you might have a SALT report that says that they have difficulties in certain areas with their speech and language. That is one of their special educational needs. So highlight that in your blue because that's a need. Go through all of the reports and pick out all of the needs. It might be sensory, it might be behavioural, it might be that they struggle to be in groups of people. Mm-hmm. They're all things that are their special educational needs. Highlight them all in one colour. Get your pink pen and then go back through all of those reports and pull out all of the things that are required to meet those needs. Mm-hmm. So it might be that for the sensory issues, they might need to have a certain amount of SI, sort of sensory integration per week or whatever it may be, and highlight that in another colour. So you've got your pink and you've got your blue. Take those reports and then look at Section B of the plan and make sure that everything that you've highlighted in blue is in Section B. That's their needs. Everything that you've highlighted in pink is in Section F. That's the provision that's needed. Mm-hmm. In terms of what you can appeal on a plan, in terms of education and healthcare plans, there's lots of different steps that you can appeal. But in terms of the draft plan, the sections that you can appeal are Sections B, which are the needs, Section F, which is the provision, and Section I, which is the school placement, the actual school or the type of school. Now, you can't appeal a draft EHCP. You can only appeal it once it's finalised and the school's been named in it. But what you can do, or you should get a letter saying that you can speak to your local authority if you're not in agreement with things that are in there, if there's anything that you want to challenge or change. Mm-hmm. You only have 15 days in which to do that. So it's a
window,
really,
that, is it?
Exactly.
Really small window.
It's a really small window. And I think one of the things that's really important to remember is you will know that you're getting a draft EHCP after about 12 to 14 weeks of putting the initial application in. So the first 6 weeks is where the local authority is deciding whether they are actually going to do a needs assessment. After that, if you've been told they are, you've got a further 6 weeks in which the local authority should be letting you know if they're not going to issue an EHCP. So about 12 to 14 weeks, you will know that it's underway, they're doing all of the assessments. You've then got another few weeks in which to expect your draft plan to arrive. And I think the best advice I can give you is to use that time wisely. Start doing your research, start looking around schools, start getting all of that support in place that for yourself as well. Talk to other people that have been through the process. Talk to us if you need to. Come to us and ask the questions, we'll help. But by the time you get your draft plan, you should have a clear idea in your head. And you should have been and looked at the schools and talked to them about how they would support your child if your child was to come to that particular school. So that when you get the draft plan, you've then just got that 15 days in which to sit down, concentrate on looking through it with a fine-tooth comb, going through all of those sections and making sure that everything that should be in there, does Section A, does it really reflect the views and the feelings and that of the young person. You know, as a parent, are your views and wishes and all of those sorts of things in there as well. Get that all together. Be really conscious of that 15-day window. You should be going back to the local authority, asking them either to meet with them, and if you do ask for a meeting, they should honour that that request. Talk to them about what you want to change. You might find that they're quite happy to change things, and you might get another draft. There might be another version of the draft comes through. There might be several versions of that draft come through. They might finalise the plan as it is, but if that happens, you do have a right to appeal that decision through the SEN tribunal.
Yeah, that's when the appeal process really comes into its own.
Yeah.
So you've given us some brilliant advice already, top tips already around going through the plan, perhaps using colour coordination to highlight needs and provisions. You've also mentioned really doing your research about schools and what have you. Have you got any other top tips about what to do when you receive your draft plan through?
Yeah, there is actually, just to point out there, we talked about which sections of the plan you can appeal. So I just wanted to point out that although officially you can only appeal sections B, F and I, you can bring an appeal on the social care and health sections of a plan.
Okay.
But you have to do that alongside appealing sections B and F. You can't just appeal the social care or health element of the final plan. But if you are taking sections B and F to appeal, you can ask for them to also look at sections on social care and health care alongside that. A tribunal would not be able to enforce any decisions on those sections, but they can make recommendations to a local authority. So although they're not appealable on their own, if you are going to appeal sections B and F, you can then pull all that together and sort of say, I'm not particularly happy with that being there or whatever it may be. Top tips, I think, just remembering that, you've got this far. You've got as far as getting the draft plan in front of you. That's a massive pat on the back because it's a really challenging, it's challenging just to get that far. So to be able to sort of sit there and say, right, I've got this now. Take your time in terms of not panicking, but be aware of that 2-week window, that 15-day window that you've got to make sure that you get things discussed with your LA and your school choice in place. Remember, there's support out there. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of groups that you can contact for particular support. The Witherslack group has a whole host of resources on their website. Things like the EHCP support pack. I've got a lovely team of ladies that I work alongside that support parents, not just in looking for places for our schools, but just giving general bits of advice about the EHCP process. More than happy to help, to pick up the phone and we'll try and guide you through it. But don't panic and, just embrace the fact that you've got that support in place and you're there.
Brilliant. I think we'll put a link to that Witherslack group EHCP support pack in the bio so that people know where to access that quite quickly.
Yeah.
So we like to end our podcast with our guests coming in and think about their words of wisdom. So when we're thinking about the draft EHCP, what would be your words of wisdom, the little takeaways that our families can really act upon?
I think for me, it's about realising that number one, it doesn't define your child. And I think we talked earlier, didn't we, Laura, about the fact that the first thing you often see on an EHCP is the words or lots of different diagnoses: autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, all of these things. That's not your child.
No.
That's not your child. Just remember that in the core of all of that, your child should be recognised, and it should be a true reflection on what your child is about, who they are, and for it not to be a negative document.
No. Because
quite often these documents are full of things like, they struggle with this, they struggle with that. We should be sort of saying, let's have a look at this document and let it reflect them as a person. And if you can read that document and see your child, sort of visualise your child as you're reading it, then you've got it absolutely right. If you can't, then go back to the local authority and just question it and say, this is not a true reflection of who my child is.
Oh, thanks so much.
You're
It's a
welcome.
really informative podcast, and really hope that people listening today have got those takeaway messages that we've kind of put in there today. But we will link into the bio about that education, health and care plan.
I tried to keep it simple because I think it's such a tricky road to navigate. Is the EHCP process, and it's full of lots of different legal references and sections, this and this act and that, and that overwhelms people. And I think sometimes just to understand that actually when you scrape away the surface, there is a process. It is tricky, but it's not insurmountable. You can do it, and you've got this far. So, if you're listening and you've got that draft EHCP, keep going.
And help is out there. Help is out there. Yeah. Thank you so much for being one of the people that shared your knowledge to kind of help our listeners today. Thank you so much, Simone.
Thank you, Laura.